What is good, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in once again. My name is Pete, aka PA Soul, and you're watching episode 6 of the SoulCast. Again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for checking this episode out. Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know how I'm doing. Today's guest is none other than Derek Moss. This guy is a super, super talented producer, guitar player, musician, member of the music business. This guy knows so much to do about music, and he's got a really philosophical mindset that I really, really like. So without further ado, give it up for my boy, D Moss. And we are live. What's good, D Moss? How you doing, man?
Doing well. Really happy to be here. Always great to see you, man.
Bro, good to see you. It's been a minute. It's been a long, long time. I've actually had a couple people that I've been talking to from college, from
Mhm.
back in the day. It's only been 2 years, but it feels like forever.
Yeah. Has it been more than 2 years?
We're going on, we graduated 2018,
Hmm.
and yeah, 2021 in May is going to be the anniversary of the third year. So it's
Yeah.
been more than 2 years at this point. I cannot
Wow.
believe it. It's just flown on by.
Yeah. It really has, but I miss it dearly.
Same here, man. So you're up in Astoria, you said, right?
Yes. Astoria, Queens. I've been living here since March. So, like, coming up on about a year, actually. Um,
Word.
I'm really happy here. I almost moved to Los Angeles, but I'm really happy I didn't. Like, for
Falling
no,
apart out there, right?
yeah, for no real reason, kind of like there was no like job I was chasing or anything. It was just kind of like I'm a musician aspiring to be a professional in the industry too. Like that's where it's popping. But I went out to visit, and it was just like so fucking hard to get around everywhere. And um, I'm not a great driver either. So I like that I don't have to drive. I don't have to own a car and like I'm fine.
Oh yeah, man. You got the subways, you can just pretty much walk to everywhere
Mhm.
and you're fine. Especially the Astoria, you're like right next to everything, man. That's the shit. I'm in the same boat as you where I was thinking about moving to LA, and I sort of I went out there because I got an uncle that lives out there and a bunch of family. They live right in the heart of LA. They live like they picked me up at Van Nuys and they brought me to what the hell is the name of the village they live in? But anyway, they've lived there for 100,000 years, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should try out LA. I'm like, I love
Mhm.
warm weather. I love being outside. I love the beach. I love the, obviously the music scene.
Mhm.
And I was like, I really don't want to live through more New York winters, and this kind of seems like the
Yeah.
only other place.
That's the
So,
shit I hate is the winter.
oh, it's brutal. But I went out there and I had the same problem where I was like, I really don't feel like. First of all, the city's way too big. It's huge.
The
It's
city's kind of like a giant like suburb.
the whole thing. It stretches for miles. Like I went to a party there when I was out. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago at this point. It was during college that I went out to LA to see my
Mhm.
family, and I remember being at a party. I had been up for 24 hours straight because of the time lag. We stayed up all day getting there, and then we had dinner because we landed there like 9 o'clock Eastern time, but it was like 5 o'clock their time. So we went and had dinner and hung out and blah blah blah. Then went to a party, and I did the math. At that point, I was up for 24 hours, and I remember sitting there just like completely out of my mind, just high and drunk and whatever. And I looked over a hill, and my cousin was like, "Look at that shit." It stretched for miles, as long as the just city, just like you said, like kind of nothing too high, nothing high rising like New York, but just forever. And I was like, I could never navigate this fucking place.
Yeah.
It would be impossible, you
Yeah, it
know?
just like, takes like it could take an hour to drive like 15 miles.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think like they just need a better public transportation option that's not a car. Like I'm sure they're working on it. I know they are, but like you can't beat the subway system that New York has or like London has. Like
Hmm.
there's very, very few areas that you can't get to in New York City via subway. Like It's it may require like transfers and like a little bit of walking, but it's not like I live in Queens. It's not like I can't get to any areas of Manhattan or can't get to Brooklyn. It might take a bit and it might require some transfers, but yeah, like Los Angeles, like when you look at the subway map, it's like large ass gaps of areas you just can't go to if
Mhm.
you don't like if you don't drive or whatever. Like I guess you got to Uber it.
Yeah, and Uber, dude, Uber out there is ridiculous. We took an Uber from my cousin's house to my uncle's house, so to his dad's place. Maybe it was several miles, but it ran up like it was like a $50 ride. I was like, dude,
Yeah,
how do you afford to live out here? He's like, I don't. He's like, you saw the apartment I'm living in. It's a piece of shit.
I
even
just
like a
yeah.
even like a one bedroom is like it's just disgusting. It's like rat infested. It wasn't that. I mean, his place was actually pretty clean, relatively, but he had no space and he had no things because he was just like, dude, it's fucking overpriced, and I can't get any. Like you were saying, I can't get anywhere because I don't actually own a car at this point.
It's like
So,
more expensive than New York City.
oh yeah,
Like,
by a lot. I feel like LA. Well, they did a. I saw this thing recently that was like an average cost of living, and you look at like in particular the Pacific Northwest, like San Francisco up to like Seattle was like $3,000 a month or something just for your basic necessities. LA was a little bit behind, like 25. New York was actually not that bad. I mean, relatively.
sorry, I'm getting. Yeah, what's up? Thanking someone? No. Can you close my door? Sorry.
Oh shit, you good. All good.
It's live TV, baby.
Uh-oh. That's what happens, man. This is a live stream. We're not editing any of this out, so watch what you say. I did a couple podcasts where I said some dumb shit and had to go back and just splice it. But anything bad happens, we can just splice it out, but no big deal. But anyway, man, like it's just some of the cost of living in some of these places is, like I said, just astronomical. And I couldn't imagine I mean, New York is probably pretty high, right? Like you guys are paying quite a
Yeah,
bit
but you
more.
don't have to worry about a car.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty sweet. So that
Yeah.
knocks off a ton of money. I mean, I'm thinking about what I'm paying for my car right now. That would knock off like a lot, maybe a third of what I'm paying just to live at this point. I'm still at my parents' house. I'm out here in the boonies, man. I was
Mhm.
actually thinking about I was thinking not to totally copy everything Joe Rogan does, but like I was thinking about Texas because, dude, you look at the prices. You could buy a mansion out there for like a quarter mil. It's
Really?
crazy. Is it some of these McMansions that I don't know how they got built. I don't want to know how they got built, but there's some of these old ass mansions you could buy for dirt cheap, like
Mhm.
the same cost of a ranch house up here in New York, man.
Where in Texas are you thinking?
I was thinking Houston and
Mhm.
Austin. I feel like is where everybody's going right now, so it's going to quickly turn into just LA too. You know what I mean? So I was thinking
Yeah,
Houston. I was also thinking Atlanta, just because obviously it's not in Texas, but
yeah,
just as like a alternative place where there's still a great music scene and there's still a lot going on, but not quite as just overrun as New York and not quite as inaccessible as LA, you know?
yeah. Of those places you mentioned, I've only been to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lot of fun. Like I went when I was in college to visit my friend that was going to school down there. And one thing that now is like Texas is a lot more lenient with the COVID thing.
Oh yeah.
So I mean there's whatever about that, but you can have more opportunity if you go there tomorrow than if you go to New York City or Los Angeles.
100%. I can only imagine. I mean, speak to your experience for a second and like what's going on. Cause like you said, you moved there in March. So you literally hit like the crest of the
Yeah.
COVID shit and you've been in it since then. So kind of speak to your experience about like what it's like being in Astoria, heart of the city, in just the weirdest time ever to be in a city, you know?
Yeah, well, it was really scary at first. Like apocalyptic. It was
Mm.
the closest thing to an apocalypse that I've experienced.
Fuck,
It
dude.
was far from that, but like I think the hardest thing in the beginning was like the lack of knowledge that the government and health officials had about it, you know? And like the fact that it was in our backyard, like whether we liked it or not. And then just started hearing people are getting it, people are getting it. It's like, are they gonna die? Like what's fucking happening here?
It's terrifying.
And I do think the time of the year really has to do with it. And I think the time of the year really has to do with just people's immune systems in general. Like I like obviously the summer was a lot less scary than right now and in March and April then. Um, but I don't know. One hypothesis I have is like, okay, so over the summer, like all these people were getting it, but were kind of like asymptomatic, but it was like being spread. Maybe it's just kind of like that's how all diseases are, and um, when in times of year where our immune systems are weaker, that's when the disease presents itself with symptoms. So maybe something like the flu does get spread around during the summer, and we all catch the flu during the summer. We're just like in a time of the year where our immune systems are feeling good, and we don't show symptoms for the flu, but we might all be spreading it. I don't fucking know though. Like I'm just that's just me and my brain. Like I
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, man.
yeah
It makes sense. Like the idea, sort of put in my own words, would be like you're getting these diseases all year, but your body's better equipped to handle it in the seasons where you can go outside and get vitamin
yeah
D and run. And when you're trapped inside, like you said, things, you're just kind of in front of a computer screen typing away on whatever you're doing all winter. At least for both of us, I know that's the case.
yeah
Just kind of, you get it, things hit you more. Things get a little bit more, they hit you harder, and it's kind of harder to bounce back.
yeah yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like we've never mass tested the population for a virus on this scale. You know, hundreds of thousands of people are getting tested every day just to get tested, not because they're displaying symptoms. So then you could collect more data and like, figure out what's actually going on with disease spread. Then maybe what we were like, maybe what the medical and health professionals thought what was really happening with viruses is a little bit different than what's actually going on with viruses. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like back to your original question, like what was it like in March and April? It was just like so fucking scary and weird, and I took it really seriously, and I still do. Um, and it was just a lot of fear. Um, and everyone's like saying like, "Oh, we'll all get through this." And like, I know I did. I know you did, but not everyone got through it. I can think of over 600,000 people that didn't.
Mm.
So I was just kind of like, maybe we shouldn't be saying that we'll get through this. There's a lot of people that aren't.
I mean, the way I see that, sort of my opinion on this has been, I'm not total Donald Trump on this situation, but my opinion has always been with this sort of situation. Like for example, I equate it to, like, on a much larger, much more serious scale, the way our immune systems handle college, right? Like
Mhm.
I've been having this thought a lot because I've been sort of rethinking those days in the past few weeks, and it's when we go back to college from, we were all over the state, right? Like I was upstate in Albany, and there's a lot of people from the island, the city, all over the place. We would all congregate in this one area, and then we would all get each other sick immediately. And so that we'd have an epidemic. We'd have like a miniature spread of whatever's going on. I know I would get a sinus infection like every
Mhm.
second week of being there. And I think part of it was because we were treating our bodies like shit. And I think right now the problem isn't COVID necessarily as much as our collective health. As a society, we're pretty unhealthy. Society, we Mickey D's all day, and we
Mhm.
drink like fiends, and drinking is a little bit is okay, but like we get hammered every weekend, and we smoke cigarettes, and it's just like there's so much stuff in our society that's unhealthy. I think that we're less able to deal with it, and especially mentally. I think mentally we're a little bit less healthy than we used to be too.
Well,
So
one thing with COVID though, like that's very clear, at least to me, is like there's something here that shouldn't be like a maybe it's not a disease, maybe it's 5G, maybe it's
a lot of people are thinking that.
germ theory. I don't know what it is, but there's something happening that happened in March and April and is probably about to happen again. That's like getting a weird large amount of people sick and a lot of them dying that like comes all at once and then kind of goes away.
Mhm.
And it's incredibly regional. That's something a lot of people are missing is that it like this COVID thing like really takes one specific geographic location and then wreaks havoc and then moves on to the next one. Um, it's really fucking weird and scary and like yeah, like I have people in my life that work at hospitals and it's like we've never seen anything like this. Like there's never been a time in history except previous pandemics where just all of a sudden the hospital is full with people that have the same symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, if you do have health conditions and you live an unhealthy life, that is a huge factor on if you're going to end up in the hospital or not, or if you're going to end up dead or not. But like, there's something like that's going on this year. There's something that's here that's making a lot of people really sick that wasn't here before. Um, and yeah, I don't know. And then like then obviously divides people into like should we be safe or should we be living not let it prevent us from living the life that we want to live.
Hmm. See, I lean a lot towards the B section of what you just said, right?
Mhm.
Not, and the caveat of that is like when you say something like that, I feel like people love to jump on you, like you're gonna murder everyone, like you're the problem. And I'm like, I look at the facts. There was this interview with Dr. Drew Pinsky that I watched actually tonight before this, and he was talking about, he's like, well, if you look at like the hard facts of the case right now, it's a 99% survival rate. So for the most part, if you are in the 99th group of people, there's that 1% that's going to get really, really sick and have to go to the hospital. But for the most part, you're going to get it and you're going to get sick and you're going to be okay. And so I sort of take that as like, all right, I'm going to be okay. So I could put that in a box and say, I'm going to be okay, even if I, knock on wood. Now, when it comes to like being super duper safe, I'm like, I think it's doing more damage by having a neurotic mindset about it. I think we're doing more damage to ourselves by constantly worrying like, oh, I got to be like 6 feet away from this guy. I gotta wash my hands all the time. Dude, I work at a bank right now as my day job, right?
Mhm.
We got to spray disinfectant spray in the air and all over the counter every time someone comes up to the counter. And we got to wear gloves and mask. And it's just like, I think the neurotic part of this, the mental part of it, is doing way more damage to like our society in general. You know,
Mhm.
not to downplay the deaths, not to downplay the sickness, but we are just at a level where everybody's just sparkling with fear energy, and it needs to stop at some point. So I'm more of the mind. I guess I'm more of the Texas mindset where I'm like, well, you know, like not to be dismissive, but also what are we doing here? Are we just gonna lock down every winter and every spring over and over and over again until there's maybe a vaccine, which could be
I
years.
think there's a vaccine like here,
There's
which
a
is
vaccine here, but to get the mass vaccination done it's going to
Yeah,
take a
take a long
long,
time.
long time, you know?
Well,
So
I think it's always good for like people like you and I that like I lean this way, you lean this way to like peacefully talk about it, because there's a lot of not that going on. There's a lot of the opposite of that going on. And like
definitely.
so much of it takes place on like Facebook statuses and tweets and Instagram and stuff where it's like this you're looking at everything through a pigeonhole
Oh,
when
for real.
and you can't have proper discourse. Um, and like I don't know the COVID issue, and then just like presidential election and things like people don't know how to respect other people's opinions, and like everyone is entitled to an opinion. And yeah, but okay, so one thing you said like about the fear, and like yeah, there are a lot of aspects where the safety measures, whether they be mental or physical or locking up certain businesses from like a lot of those safety measures are turning out to be worse than the actual danger, which is weird. Um,
Definitely weird.
but
Yeah.
but one like what's what's the government supposed to do? This has never happened in our lifetime. Like I wouldn't know what to fucking do. I think New York mainly during the summer was like a little too strict still. Like I think they didn't open up fast enough and now have just kind of opened up and are like fuck, cases are rising again. We just got here. We should have kind of maybe we should have did this earlier. It's way too late to close restaurants again because
Oh, yeah. People are going to riot, dude.
if you close restaurants now, they're not going to be here when it's over. So much is not going to be here when it's over, and it's shit people dedicated their lives to. Um, so in so many aspects, the safety precautions are worse than the danger. But we'll never know what would have happened if we did nothing, and I think it would have
That's
been
true.
really bad, especially in New York City. Like if the hospitals were filled to the brim, and there was like if there was 10% more people that needed to go to the hospital, maybe they would have been in the waiting room the whole time. Um, we'll never know what would have happened, but we'll never know what happened in China. And I think a lot of fucking people died in China.
Dude, this is something that no one talks about. I'm glad you brought up is that, dude, the numbers they reported was something just ridiculously low. Like you look at
Not
like
a, what they reported was not close to a pandemic.
no. Yeah, what they reported was like okay, yeah, the township of Wuhan got pretty sick, but it didn't really spread outside of that and it kind of, the country itself didn't dude, I don't believe that first. That's like North Korea level lying, like, oh, we have 100% literacy rate. It's bullshit. There's no way that China, they definitely underreported it. And I think they definitely did a lot to conceal what actually happened. I'm one of those people that I think it must have been in a lab. It must have come from a lab.
It might have.
It's,
Um,
I, I'm not going to guarantee, but I would bet a lot of my money on that it was human synthesized, or at least worked on by a group of scientists and got out by accident somehow. And like you said, man, I I would also bet my money on the fact that it ran through China like the plague. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Honestly,
because when you're the first area that it affects, you won't know about it until you're like, why is there so many damn people in the hospital right now?
hmm
Uh oh, this is the big one. Oh shit.
Yeah, yeah. It's great, man. It blows my mind the level of narcissism it would take for somebody like Chi to be like, you know what? Nah, that didn't happen. You know, it's Yeah, they're shipping Muslims off to be murdered and working work camps, and they're underreporting all the COVID. I'm not the biggest fan of that country, to say the
It's
least. You
it's
know.
it's so weird. I don't think I know I didn't realize how censored and like um how much wasn't shown to us about that country.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
what else
crazy.
is going on there?
Well, the Uyghur Muslims is one of the really
Yeah.
big deals that's going on there, and it's one of the things I think is a real atrocity. There's uh the what are they called? The cell phone that they just made, that they basically what was it called? I forget.
I don't know.
But it was Huawei. That's what it is. It's like the second biggest cell phone manufacturer on earth right now, because it's all of China. And what they do is they put all their own versions of like Facebook and WhatsApp and
Mhm.
Google on this phone, and all those can be monitored by the Chinese government. So basically, they can say, okay, we don't like people saying bad things about Xi. We don't like people saying, spreading Me Too. We don't like people spreading all these
Mhm.
messages of social justice. We like people just watching, you know, TikTok dancing videos, and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
so that's the country is just. I mean, then again, that's what we hear. I don't know. I'm not in a position to actually know any of this stuff hard fact, because it's just, of course, we're going to hear bad stuff about China. They're a lot like the Russia of today, you know.
Mhm.
So I, I don't know. Jury's out, but they're definitely doing some fucked up shit over there, for real. You know.
Yeah, I mean they didn't wave the red flag that this coronavirus thing is coming.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy. And look at, like, going back to what I originally asked, which was the how it affected people in New York. I've talked to you, and I've talked to my buddy Anthony McHale, who you definitely know.
yeah, yeah.
And you guys are both in New York, and it's just it's a different type of experience. I feel like, talking to the two of you, I feel like you both kind of changed as people, having lived through that. From who I knew you in college and who I know
Mhm.
you now, I feel like you gained a lot of life experience that, like, very few people gained, because New York was such an epicenter, and it was like the heart of what was going on with the COVID crisis. You know, and so it blows my mind whenever I get to talk about this stuff with you guys, because it's like an insider scoop on what's going on down there.
Yeah. I mean like at first it was like should I not even go outside? Like cuz we didn't know if it was airborne or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think like obviously the fear of getting the virus or the people in my life getting it was like a huge fear, but like I worked at a venue at the time and like my income was fucked. So it was kind of like how okay, when can I expect to get paid like a decent amount again? Like I can't do any work for this venue at the moment. There's no shows to promote. And it's like where can I even go to get another job? And thankfully I figured that out. Um,
What'd you end up doing?
so I actually work for a music marketing startup now, and
Sweet.
yeah, Vira Marketing. And I'm working with a lot of artists doing kind of like Spotify and Instagram promotions. I'm learning a lot. Um, it's great. But I have the luxury of being able to do that remote. Not everyone's like aspirations and skill set are in something that they could do remote. And so like when we are talking about LA like earlier, it's just like it makes me really sad. Like the amount of people that live there, granted the large living expense of being there, that can't do what they dedicated their life in, whether it be in the performing or entertainment industry or their backup job as a bartender or waitress or or if they worked at a venue or shit like that. Um,
Yeah, man. What? So here's a question for you. What do you think is sort of the future of the entertainment business going forward? After, all the COVID shit, after all the craziness and the shell shock that we're all feeling right now, like, where do you see music and entertainment going, and like, what do you think is gonna happen? Yeah, what's the phoenix that's gonna rise out of the ashes of this?
um, I'm hoping it's Daft Punk.
Oh yeah.
That would be sick. I just really hope like concerts could happen again and Daft Punk is back and ready to do a tour.
Fuck yeah, dude.
But I think like I do think like a day the day we can go back to the concert is now in sight, that we know a lot more about the pandemic and what we could do about it, and that there's a vaccine here and like ready. So the future is, I see like concerts are going to come back like a motherfucker, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a really much needed renaissance with rock bands, and I'm hoping that like rock comes back from the dead.
I think it's possible. I really do. I think you see a lot, even like, in your personal experience working with bands like the Mariguanas, working with, you know, and sort of like the genre bending that you've done in your career so far. I could definitely see how a lot of these sort of like quote unquote dead genres are might revive themselves and re-experience a renaissance. I could see how it's going to happen. And I was also thinking, I was like, the I think just the relief is going to feel like a renaissance at the very least. We're
And
going to.
there's so much content to sing songs about now
Oh yeah, there's
that
so much
everyone can
misery.
relate to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much misery that people can dig into that well and really come up with something bluesy. So it's crazy.
Right before this, right before the pandemic, Rage Against the Machine was supposed to tour. And I was like, huh, maybe I should see them. Like, I'm sure it's gonna be very expensive. And then I was on the Ticketmaster line, virtual Ticketmaster line, and
Mhm.
it was just like upper 200 bowl level seats still available for like $180, and I was just like, I'm just
Yeah.
not gonna get a ticket. But now I would gladly drop $300 to see Rage Against the Machine at any seat in the house, just like because I haven't been to a concert in fucking ever, and Rage Against the Machine is like the main band I want to see in this hit period of time. Also, they haven't played a show in a decade.
Yeah. 100%, man. I feel like it's just it's so taken for granted when it's here. The idea that, oh, I can just go to a concert and so I don't really think much
Mhm.
about it, man. I was the same way. Like so many good bands and good hip hop acts and good everything came through like my area, for example, just through Albany, and comedians that I love, that I was, like Jim Gaffigan came through and Burt
Mhm.
Kreischer came through, and I wanted to
I
go
had
see those.
tickets to Gaffigan.
Dude, and I didn't even bother because I was like, he'll come back. Next year he'll be on tour again, promote another album, and blah, blah, blah. And look where we are. I was like,
Mhm.
fuck, I really missed an opportunity right there. So I think we're gonna stop taking entertainment for granted at some point, and I hope that that's soon. I really hope that like people stop just thinking like, oh, it's just one of a million concerts I could go see. You know, but I think you're right that when you use the word renaissance, the word renaissance, like, elaborate on what you mean by renaissance to me.
Um, like I don't know. Maybe I I don't know if I've knowingly lived through a renaissance. Well, actually, no, I have. Um, the Marvel movies is a great example. Um,
Yes.
like that was true cinematic and entertainment history. like never done before and will never be replicated. And I think I'm hoping there will be some bands that come along that can play shows that have never been done before and will never be replicated, given their music and like what it meant to the time period.
Oh, definitely, man. And you hit a real nerve with me with the Marvel movies, dude. I remember we were in Oneonta when the third Avengers movie came out,
Mhm.
and I had been following it just like you since 2008, all the way up until 10 years later, a decade of movies, and you're just like, dude, all your heroes die right in front of you.
Imagine that shit happened right before the pandemic. Like
Oh,
imagine we didn't get Endgame before the pandemic.
I would, I would jump off a bridge, dude. That'd be the end of it.
That's one of
Because
the biggest things I miss with is a Marvel movie coming out.
oh yeah, the drop was just such a it like the build got better and better and better every year. You know, every year was like, oh, Iron Man 3's coming out. Oh shit, Thor number two's coming out. Oh shit, Avengers. Oh shit,
Yeah.
Avengers 2. Doctor Strange. It's just like getting more and more hyped for this like crazy finale. And that I think overall, what was it, like 6 or 7 hours was the whole Infinity War and Endgame together,
Yeah.
and it was just this epic ending to this, and it left a mark in my heart, and I know it. I'm sure for you too. Like
It was
shit
yeah,
was
it was like
crazy.
it was like a near flawless like execution to like this cinematic universe. Like not really arguably Incredible Hulk and Thor 2, but not really like a bad movie in the franchise. And like the there's never been storytelling done like that across 27 movies or something like that. It's never been done before. And it's not I was having this argument with my roommate, like, were they successful because of the the imagery and the special effects and stuff and like it was superheroes? I was like, no, like they were successful because like it was never done before storytelling techniques that were paced so well and executed so well, and they were interesting and plot driven, and there was character development. Like it wasn't just flashy special effects, because then the last Star Wars movie would have been great, and I
Yeah,
didn't think it was that good.
I didn't
it
even go see. Dude,
it
I'm
looked
so sad.
amazing though. Like I did see it, and like visually it was, I think it was visually the best Star Wars movie, but it was not very interesting. And I think it's just because like the plot, the storytelling and the plot was like not convincing at all. Like it was very dry. It didn't have much to do with the two that came out before it. It wasn't this cohesive storytelling that the Marvel movies were able to accomplish.
Oh, you're 100% right, man. I feel like the problem with Star Wars, in my opinion, was that like we had 4, 5, and 6 come out way before we were born, right? And then 1, 2, and 3, we grew up with those, and those sort of like rounded the circle, to complete the story. So the
Mhm.
story already had like a signed, sealed, delivered stamp on it. It's done, you know.
And then Disney bought it.
And then Disney was like, all right, well, we see this beautiful, completely finished product, and we're just gonna tack on 3 completely random, unnecessary sequels that at the end of the day were kind of just as cash grab. Like I didn't feel like any of them had anything original to say. Like you were saying, like this plot, the story kind of fell flat. I did like Rogue One.
Mhm.
I thought Rogue One was pretty cool because
I actually really like Force Awakens, but it's like this 21st century version of Star Wars: A New Hope,
mhm.
which I enjoyed the ride, and I think like that opened up opportunity for like a powerful plot driven trilogy. But I think what fucked them up was like they wanted to have a different director and writers for each of those episodes. So it was like J.J. Abrams worked on the first one, then I forget who worked on the second one, and someone else was going to be writing and directing the third one. But then along the way, the fucking what was episode 7? Last
Uh, yeah, it was Force Awakens, Last Jedi. I forget what the ninth one. Like I said, I didn't even see
Yeah.
the ninth
Yeah.
one.
So after Last Jedi came out and it didn't get like a super great response, they were like, "Uh-oh, whoever we had planned for the third one, like let's just bring back J.J. Abrams because he did a good job with the first one." And then this like bullshit band-aid storyline and plot was just like thrown together for the third one that was like very obvious, and it was just like, for the biggest movie franchise of all time, like how did you not have a plan before going in? Like how did you figure out the plan for the third one, or episode 9, in between episodes 8 and 9? Like why wasn't it all figured out fucking before episode 7?
Well, I think they figured out that they can't follow Avengers. Like Marvel's also owned by Disney, and they were like, okay, we already made the most epic ending to any series or franchise that we could possibly make. Like, where do we go from here? What can we possibly do that's not already been done by us?
But you can
You
still
know,
just make a good movie or
I mean,
make a
that's true.
trilogy.
That's true. I think they just ran out of original ideas at some point. Like they just kind of were like, all right, we put all of our energy into Marvel for 10 years. 11, well, what was it? 11 years. We put all of our energy into Marvel for 11 years. And now we bought Star Wars and like, I mean, like, we can make money off of it, but I don't really know what the fuck we can do with it. So I think that they just gassed themselves on Marvel, dude. That's the problem. Like all the love and affection went into that franchise. And Star Wars, they were just kind of like, there's already 6 good ones. We don't really give a shit.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to pick up on a franchise that was started and established by someone else's vision.
Oh yeah.
It's not Disney's vision, like it was George Lucas's vision, and then they bought it and are now playing around with it.
I mean, franchising wise, genius idea. Merchandising, Disney made just buco bucks on that whole thing, man.
That's
You know
the
what I mean?
point of Star Wars, though. Is like the Star Wars movies are just commercials for the merchandise.
Oh yeah.
It's just a reason to sell Chewbacca masks and like
Uh,
video games and stuff like that.
it's there's a lot of stuff that's like that. I feel like this is actually a good segue into this thing that I want to talk to you about specifically, which was how I've been reading this book. I've mentioned it in every episode so far of the podcast. It's The Death of the Artist by
The Death
William.
of the Artist is called.
Yeah, it's such a dude. I recommend it. I learned more from that book than I did from the 4 years I spent at Oneonta. It's sort of about how, well, I mean, the subtitle says it all. It's like how billionaires and big tech are destroying art, you know?
Interesting.
So it's the idea that Silicon Valley and all these billionaire marketing interests are really squeezing true art and artists,
Yeah.
to get every last ounce of like useful content out of them. And how there's this myth going around that like we live in the greatest time ever to be an artist because we have access to all these digital tools, and it's never been easier to create. But at the same time, there's such a level of noise and there's such a pressure to sell, sort of like the Star Wars example, right? Where like the movies were made for the merchandising. His thesis is sort of like, among his many theses, there's like so many. One of them is like, today the music is not made for music's sake. It's
Yeah.
made as a merchandising tool. It's made as like, okay, you are a musician, therefore can you sell Nikes? Can you sell Adidas? You're a musician. Can you know, play a song or two at this party and draw some people to it? You know, it's almost like people are forced into a position, especially musicians, where if you want to make anything of your music, you gotta abandon making the music to some extent. What do you think about that? Like, what's your idea?
It's true. It's very true. I fucking do it professionally. Like, um, like when I'm running like Instagram ads for these artists, it's about like this micro content, and like it is an ad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, yeah, I think you you got to make money like doing it if you want it to be your profession and give it your all. Because we live in a world where you need money to survive and buy food and shelter. So the things that sell, it used to be, but it's obviously not anymore. It used to be you could sell your music. If you had good music, people would buy it. But now you have to use your music to sell other things. And that's where your money's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a handful of like bands and artists that just have done a really good job at putting on a great live show and consistently being able to put on a great live show. One example is Fish.
Oh yeah, dude.
Fish, like everyone that's into Fish is in it for the show. No, they're not in it for the brand. They're not even in it for any hit songs because they don't have any hit songs. Everyone that's a fan of Fish is in it because Fish puts on this one of a kind live show that is just it's a completely musical experience. Yeah, they have lights and stuff. Um, but there's nothing else. There's no TikTok song that blew up, or there's no
There's no one hit.
yeah,
And there's nothing fluffy about it. It's very
yeah.
raw. I think that's a great example that I never even considered is Fish.
Mhm.
Like Fish come so Saratoga Performing Arts Center, SPAC, which is right down the street from you know it. It's
Yeah,
right down the street from me. Fish come there every year,
yeah,
with the exception of obviously COVID year. So they come every single year, and it just turns into like this crazy acid trip party where all these like hippies and stoners and weirdos come out, and it's an incredible time. I really want to go. I've never been, but you know, you got a good point in that Fish and a lot of these jam bands, there's no one hit that you can like, oh yeah, that's their best song, and this is the like you said the one I'm gonna do a TikTok dance to.
hmm
It's sort of the experience is the music. So do you think that like the antidote is to not make hits?
No, I think the antidote is to be able to put on a sick live show and do it consistently and make sure like that is your best asset. Um, then you have someone like Marshmello, who
Mm.
his best asset, arguably in my head at least, his best asset is that he has a marshmallow on his head. And that makes him, and his name is Marshmallow, that makes him recognizable. If he was just a guy named Pete and had this
No
same
shade, no shade.
and had the same exact songs, would people care?
It's a good point. It's a and I think the idea, at least the argument the book was making, is that well, we should be able to live in a time where yeah, the guy just Pete can make a song and that song can become popular and that song can support him financially.
Mhm.
The problem is like the regular just Pete is forced to build a gimmick of
Yeah,
some kind, which that then prop up that gimmick in order to sell the
yeah,
music. It's like no. The point is like first of all, you shouldn't even have a gimmick if you don't want one. Second of all, you shouldn't need one to sell your records. The record should be the thing that speaks, and then the gimmick can follow alongside that. But
Mhm. So then it's like, how do you get people to listen to your record, or how do you get people to, more importantly, come to your show? So
Mhm.
initially, like in 2020 going into 2021, starting at nothing, um, and you want people to come to your show, you need to do something like Marshmello, where you create it so interesting enough that they're interested in this brand that you're presenting them, and the songs be good. Um, and then that's the trap of um, that's the trap of like thinking of it of the death of the artist, and like, what do I have to do to get people interested in this? Like, my best work might be this live show, but what people might be interested in, the only avenue I have to reach these people right now is Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and Spotify. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I could talk about this for days and just go off on tangents.
Same here. There is one thing that I was thinking of actually when you were talking about that, which was maybe the answer is that we're trying to create antiquated forms of art sometimes. Maybe the idea is that the the skill that you need to survive and make it today is to artfully use the tools that are provided to you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like so I and this is sort of like what you were saying, but in a different phrasing is like you gotta there's opportunities. There's always gonna be opportunities to be the guy that has fans, to be the guy that sells out shows, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't just say, "Oh, I'm a musician," the same way you can say it in 1980 or
Mm-hmm.
1960. It means a different thing now to make music and make a career out of music. So you got to use these platforms in an artful way and sort of be able to distinguish, okay, this is the way it used to work. This is the way it's got to work today. And there's one also thing that he said, he ended on a pretty positive note, which is the chapter is called Don't Mourn, Organize, right?
What was
As
it
in,
called?
don't mourn, organize.
Okay.
So that's sort of what he was saying. He's like, look, the paradigms of yesteryear are gone. There's no fucking, all the major labels are crumbling, all the infrastructure is crumbling, the pay system is completely fucked. There's nothing you can really do. But we got to work together to understand these new paradigms that we're in. Because the problem is the music industry looks retroactively. The music industry looks at like what worked last year, the year before, the year before. That's why Napster was such a big deal. And 20 years ago is
Mm-hmm.
because the music industry was trying to look at the model they were using in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you can't operate off of it just doesn't work. It's got to be forward thinking. It's got to be, okay, how do we make music in 2025? How do we make music in 2030 and evolve into that? So I think at the end of the day, it's just about, are you adaptable? Can you create art in this weird new world that exists now?
Yeah. And then like, that's what kind of forces artists to do things that are out of their artistry,
Mhm.
because I maybe I wrote Bohemian Rhapsody in 2020 in this hypothetical universe where Bohemian Rhapsody doesn't exist, and I wrote it, arguably the best song. It's like, okay, what are the tools to get this thing heard? It's like, all right, well, I have to get this song. I have to be like, run Instagram ads, do TikToks, um, get it on Spotify playlists. But that's not what made that song what it is, and that wouldn't make that song what it is today. If that, like, I don't think if that song was written and recorded today, it would hear the light of day. I don't. It was because like that. band could play it live like really well, and they were already kind of established and people were able to see it, you know. And it was in a time where music was harder to listen to. So when people did listen to music, they paid attention to it more, and it like they're listening for the journey and not like just to hear music.
That makes sense.
Listening to music was more of an event. So when a song like that comes on, you're listening to like all the nuances in it.
Yeah, and you're not listening through like a shitty iPhone speaker. You know, you're listening to it through like a record player or
Mm-hmm.
like a live stereo system. Right? Music wasn't just casually consumed and we have some pretty kick-ass headphones nowadays that you can really get like Beats, for example, are fantastic. I love them. You know, these headphones here, fantastic. But there's something about like most people are probably listening to music like when they're cleaning their room through this. You know, just this shitty little speaker right there, and it's taken for granted. You know, it's really like it's hard to take it for granted when you put a record on a record player, and you
Mm-hmm.
and again we're just kind of falling back into the nostalgia, but at the same time, man, I think
You had to buy it too.
yeah, you had to go to a store and you had to buy it, and there's something tactile about owning the vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why vinyl made a comeback a couple of years ago, right? That's everybody was talking about that, like, oh, vinyl's making a huge comeback. I think part of that was because people miss being like, yo, Crosby, Stills and Nash record. I'm holding it. It's in
Mm-hmm.
my hand. You know, there's something beautiful about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think, like you said, I'm optimistic. I think that the future, especially coming out of COVID, people are going to stop taking these things for granted. You know, stop taking all these, especially live shows. Live shows are going to, I think, see a massive boom because people are going to, A, want to get the fuck out of the house, and B, we're going to realize that the transience of it, the fact that it's not always going to be here. You know, the bands that you love, the rappers you love, the EDM artists you love are not going to be here for very long. You know, maybe 5 to 10 years if they're lucky, to stay relevant. And they start making weird jazz albums and whatever the fuck, you know. So it's we're gonna learn to appreciate shit again like that. So
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that lasts a long time though. The appreciation. I don't know if it will. It may just be like half a year.
it might be a blip, but that blip is I'm gonna enjoy that blip, bro. That 6 months, man. I'm spending all my money on every concert. I don't give a shit. I'm getting my career off the ground at that point, you know. And I
Yeah.
know you will too. So I did want to ask you, speaking of which, like you're involved in so many projects right now. Like you got so much going on. Run me through like sort of what you're working on currently, what you think that you're going to be working on soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really gotta go to the bathroom, man.
Oh,
Fuck.
okay, you want to take a quick pee break?
I mean, what's the protocol for that?
Get up and piss and come back, and
But how does that affect your podcast?
we'll just cut it.
You just cut it?
We'll just
Okay.
go. We'll just go.
So you asked me what's next for me as an
What's
artist, I guess.
yeah? What's going on now, and then what's going on in the future? Like, where do you think you're going?
I mean, so right now, like, I'm just trying to make some like solo music, but I'm not like very married to it. I'm not like super passionate about it. It's kind of more of an experiment. And for me to have, well, one goal, the main goal was like I've never put out solo music, so I finally wanted a collection of work that's like just that's me or whoever I collaborate with. Someone could search up Derek Moss on Spotify and find things, and I could say those are songs that I wrote or helped write with a collaborator. But I also wanted to use it as a tool to learn and like figure out how does an artist get their music heard. And I learned on Spotify like that's best done through Spotify playlisting, like getting your song on large playlists. and like through Instagram ads. So it's been equal amount of work writing and producing the songs as it is researching like these strategies and figuring out and using my songs as a tool, like how's an artist supposed to get their music heard. um, so I think I'm probably going to put out a few more songs. um, and I like producing songs, and like I like it more when I'm working with other people. So like I'll probably put out a couple more songs and um promote them and shit, but like where my real passion lies is like being in a band and like being able to play the guitar live and make music with other people. So I'm probably going to try to start a new band soon, something that's more local, New York City based. Because the biggest downfall to the Mariguanas is like after we graduated college, it was just a logistical nightmare to be able to rehearse and play shows and stuff.
That's why the C word died, dude. I mean, among other reasons. I could go into. Um, one of which being my roommate, the drummer, decided to break the window in our apartment and never pay for it. But the main thing that was going on there is the logistics, like you're saying, man. I remember, we played the one big show, and then we had like we wanted to keep going, but one of us lived in Cortland, one of us lived in Rochester, one of us lived in Jersey, and one of us lived in Albany. So it's like we could meet in the middle, but that would require so much drive, especially in the part of Jason down in Jersey. It required an insane amount of driving to meet somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
We were just at all these opposite ends of this triangle that like could
Yeah.
never reach each other. So it kind of was the demise. And so I feel you on that level of like you would love to make that band keep going, but I mean, unless you guys all decide to get an apartment together or decide to live out of a Mercedes van, it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like my aspiration is to just start a New York City based band that we could rehearse regularly. Maybe it's just a cover band for the gigs and the money. Like I'm content with that. Or also just start an original band or a combination of both. But I just want to rock out like in some New York City small rooms, like these rooms that we used to play with the Mariguanas. And I think now that like I think if I do start a new band with these things I know about digital marketing for independent artists, I starting from the beginning, I know exactly what to do to go toward that goal of like being able to play regularly in rooms in New York City to rooms of people. Because I've had so much practice and experience like in the field of growing a band, growing on Instagram and Spotify, and using that as leverage to get into shows. Um, and like this is where my friends and family are, and I have a lot more friends and family like each year. So it's more people that would come out to a show, and so I hope to start another band sometime soon. It's tough when there's no like way of knowing like when we could play a show.
It's true. I mean, that's the problem with
So it's like
anything right
even,
now.
even if I do like find the perfect group of people for a band, it's like what are we working toward?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the meantime, there's still stuff you guys could do. You could, but one of the things I'm trying to do, I think, in the next few months is write another solo album, but make this one way more collaborative, as in
Mhm.
hit up people for beats, hit up people for features a lot more, um, and get all my friends on it. You know, really make it a lot. And this will be the album that I sort of end up moving out of the house to. You know what I mean? This, like, I'm working on this album as sort of a testament to actually trying to make this music thing happen for the first time in my life. Um, and you know, I think that now is a good time to workshop songs and to get in touch with people and collaborate a little bit, so that way, hopefully, when this thing ends in March or whenever the lockdown they want to end it, which I think is going to be by next summer, you know, realistically, I'll have all my songs ready and I'll be ready to burst out the gate, you know.
Mhm.
So there's no, like, I think that's a great thing for all artists to keep in mind at this point, is that, okay, this might be a blessing in disguise. The fact that you can't tour right now, you can't sort of make money in any auxiliary way other than work on your music and hope that at the end of this you can stake your claim in the live, because this, let's be honest, this took like the established universe of live bands and live artists and live art, took the snow globe and went whoosh, and now the snowflakes will fall where they fall. So when that gate is open, people are going to come flying out of it, and you got to be ready to fly out of it with them and stake your claim. So I think it might, like I said, in a weird way, be a blessing in disguise. This time that we have to just sit and write. There's so much to talk about, and there's nowhere to go. This might be the perfect time ever, you know,
Mhm.
in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Who knows
Yeah.
what's in store for both of us?
Who knows, baby? Hopefully, we're gonna cross paths sometime soon. You know, I really like to see you in person, and get a little jam sesh going, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love that.
Be fun as fuck. Well, dude, I think we've hit a natural stopping point. So go ahead and tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me, Derek Moss, on Spotify, uh, at Derek M18 on Instagram. And for my last song, Mr. Wonderful, that I did with my friend Slade, who's in my
Mr.
band,
Yakobie Slade.
we actually have a music video. It's on YouTube. And next step in my learning how to do music marketing stuff is like we're gonna do like a big YouTube push for that music video and figure out YouTube ads, Google ads, and stuff like that.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for being a guest on the SoulCast. This has been episode, I want to say 6. I stopped keeping track. I gotta check that shit. But Derek Moss, ladies and gentlemen, out of New York, New York, coming at you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hell yeah, brother. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Yeah. I mean, you want to chat after it's done recording?
Yep, here we go.